Yo, what's up guys, welcome to my humble YouTube channel where I bring you fanfiction that will brighten your days. Before we start, a subscribe is greatly appreciated, and don't forget to leave a like and ring the bell icon so you won't miss exciting new fanfiction stories. Two Gods Summoned to a Fantasy World by BenGrem1234. Chapter 6. Annihilation of some lesser vampires. Rimuru, Khloe and Canade all rushed to the small town that was on fire. They rushed with their full speed in order to get to the town on time. Rimuru and Khloe would have gotten there in a blink of an eye, but they were keeping pace with Canade. "We are wasting time. I didn't want to use this cause I feel like it's cheating on our adventure, but I've got no choice," Rimuru shouted. Just then, Rimuru, Khloe and Canade disappeared and appeared in the middle of the burning town. Canade was shocked. The reason was because they were still a bit far from the town before, but now they are in the middle of the town. How did they get here? "I teleported us here. We need to search for any survivors," Rimuru answered her thoughts. "This is terrible," Khloe said, looking at the burning city. A group of 10 people ran to where Rimuru, Khloe and Canade were. They stopped after they had surrounded them. One of the people surrounding them stepped forward. "It looks like there are still some survivors left in this town. We need to hurry up and kill them before the boss gets mad," one of the people surrounding them said. Rimuru calmly looked at all of them. "You people are vampires, right? Why would you do this to this town?" The group of vampires looked at each other before they burst out laughing at Rimuru's questions. "Imagine this meal questioning us," one of the vampires said in between laugh. "We don't have time for this. Let's kill them and be done with it," another said. Rimuru turned to Khloe. "You know what to do, Khloe." Khloe nodded. "Leave it to me." Khloe then drew her sword, which put all the group of vampires on guard. She slashed her sword and returned it to its sheath in a blink of an eye. Immediately after she did that, all the vampires that surrounded them fell to the ground with their heads separated from their body and a torrent of blood gushing out from their lifeless bodies. Canade, who was on guard ever since they were surrounded, became surprised and confused. "What happened to them?" "I cut off all their heads before either of them could comprehend what happened," Khloe told her casually. Canade gulped and nodded her head after hearing Khloe's explanation. She made a vow to always stay on Khloe's good side. "Listen up. Spread out and search for any survivors in this town. If you encounter any vampire on the way, kill them with no mercy," Rimuru instructed them. They all nodded and ran to different direction. Canade ran to a part of town where the fire was weakest. She reached the streets and saw 2 vampires cutting down a man who was protecting a little girl whom she presumed was his daughter. The little girl, who looks like she is 4, was shouting and crying for the vampires to spare her father, while the vampires were cutting her father up piece by piece in a very gruesome way. Canade, after seeing the man brutally butchered by the vampires, rushed to assist before they killed the little girl as well. She casted a simple fire spell to get the 2 vampires' attention. The 2 vampires turned around after sensing magic behind them, only to see a ball of flame heading to them. They jumped into the air and avoided the flaming ball, which vanished after missing them. They landed on the ground and looked to see who casted that fire spell. They saw Canade standing there and glaring at them. "A human wants to challenge us?" one of the vampires said in confusion. "We should teach her a lesson in blood for this insolence," the other said in anger. Canade looked at the little girl, who was still crying over the dead, butchered body of her father, in pity. She hardened her resolve to defeat these 2 vampires. "Try and teach me a lesson if you can, you worthless abominations," Canade shouted in rage. She pointed her staff at the girl and casted a barrier to protect her. The 2 vampires used their speed to rush to Canade with the intention of killing her. Canade stood and watched the 2 vampires coming to kill her at very slow speed. "What's going on? Is it that these 2 vampires are messing with me, or are they this slow?" she thought to herself. Nevertheless, it didn't stop Canade from dodging the slash one of the vampires sent to her face. The vampire that slashed Canade became surprised after seeing Canade casually dodge his super-enhanced speed slash. He tried to slash her again with his claws, but Canade pointed her staff to his stomach before he could comprehend what was happening. "Disappear," Canade said as a huge flame shot out of her staff, which consumed the vampire. The vampire screamed in agony before he turned to ash. Canade turned to the other vampire with a cold look. "You are next." The second vampire who saw how easily his partner was killed became frightened. He immediately turned into a huge cluster of bats and tried to escape. "I won't let you." Canade stretched out her staff in the vampire's direction and a huge tornado of wind appeared and began to suck in all the bats. The bats tried their best to flee, but the wind that was sucking them was very powerful. The bats could do nothing but accept their fate and got sucked into the tornado. Once they were all inside the tornado, Canade raised her staff in the sky and the weather changed. A thundercloud appeared and a huge lightning struck inside the tornado, which destroyed everything inside the tornado, including the bats. A huge dust cloud was formed after the lightning struck the ground. After the dust cloud was cleared, all that remained was the destroyed area, which was a sign of the battle that was fought there. Canade looked at her hand in astonishment. To think that I could handle 2 lesser vampires like it was a walk in the park. I really have become powerful. And the best part about this power-up is that I can now cast spells without any incarnation. I am so glad that I met God Rimuru and Goddess Khloe, she thought to herself. Canade turned to where the little girl was and saw her looking at her with a shocked and curious look, even though her eyes were filled with tears. She dispelled the barrier around the little girl before she walked up to her and brought her in for a hug. Canade tightened her hold on the little girl. "I'm sorry I couldn't get here sooner. Is okay now, you can let it all out." The little girl began to cry her hearts out after hearing what Canade said to her. She kept crying and crying until she cried herself to sleep. Canade gently took the little girl and placed her on her back and made sure she was comfortable. "I need to go and see if there are any more survivors." She began to run deep into the town to continue her search with the little girl still on her back. With Khloe meanwhile, Khloe was moving like a killing machine, killing all vampires she could find. None of them were her match, and the vampires soon realized this and attempted to flee, but she cut them down before they had the chance. She approached a part of the town that has more burning buildings and saw a vampire whose aura was different from the other vampires killed. The vampire was female and she was wearing a sexy war dress. She was holding a weapon that appears to be a spear, but on a closer inspection is different from a spear. The female vampire turned around after sensing a killing intent directed at her to see a girl dressed in a white hero's outfit with blue cape approaching her in a calm way. She smiled and readied herself for battle with a worthy foe. "I never thought I would find myself someone worthy to fight in this town. My name is Yuki Victoria and I am the Assistant General serving under Elder Yoshino of the 6th Region." "State your name." The female vampire named Yuki introduced herself. Khloe was taken aback a little by the introduction, but she composed herself. "My name is Khloe Obel and I am the last being you will meet. You may be strong judging by your aura, but if you think you can beat me, then you are surely mistaken," Yuki shouted. Yuki immediately flew to Khloe and raised her weapon above her head. She smashed her weapon on Khloe with considerable force, which causes big boom once it made contact with the ground. When the dust cleared, Khloe was nowhere to be seen. Yuki enhanced her senses and sensed Khloe behind her. She turned around and saw Khloe still watching her without moving. Yuki got cocky. "I commend you. You were wise to have dodged my weapon before it made contact with you. My lance was blessed by the queen herself. It has the power to shatter anything it touches regardless of any defense. Prepare yourself for this time, I won't miss." She rushed Khloe with her full speed and tried to stab her, but Khloe stepped out of the way. Yuki, seeing her attack being dodged by Khloe, got angry, which made her to lose her composure. She began to slash recklessly at Khloe, trying to stab or cut her, but Khloe kept dodging all her attacks. Yuki's speed was impressive and could be comparable to sound, but to Khloe, she was very slow, which made dodging her quite easy. As Yuki was still trying to cut Khloe, Khloe disappeared and reappeared behind her with her sword in her hand. Everything appeared as if time stopped until Yuki's head fell to the ground along with her body. A sea of blood gushed out from her headless body, which covered the street in a pool of blood. Khloe turned and walked up to the head of Yuki, which was still trying to breathe. Yuki's head looked at Khloe with a confused look. "How did I lose?" she asked. "You lost because I'm simply better than you," Khloe told her. "Just what or why yo you?" Yuki's head said in a very weak voice. "Like I said before, my name is Khloe Obel and I am the god of time," Khloe told her. That shocking truth was the last thing Yuki heard before she lost her life. Khloe looked at Yuki's dead body and felt nothing but contempt for her. "I guess I should go and hunt down more vampires before Rimuru decides to erase them all. I need to vent out more of my anger on them for causing this, Khloe said as she left to look for more vampires. With Rimuru was walking casually through the burning town. He has yet to encounter any vampire as he was walking. It's not because he hasn't met any, it's because all the vampires has instinctively avoid any part he was walking on. The lesser vampire's instinct told them never to approach Rimuru because it will mean certain death otherwise. They have been moving away from any part Rimuru was in. Though it made no difference since Canade and Khloe were determined to eradicate all vampires in this town. Rimuru was not paying attention to the small fries in the city. He was focused on the only human life he was still sensing that was not the little girl Canade was carrying. He walked up to a big building and saw many vampires acting as guard in the building. It looks like the boss of all this operation is in there. Let's go pay him a visit, Rimuru said to himself. He casually walked up to the building with all the vampires falling dead without understanding what killed them. It's not that Rimuru did anything, it's just that his presence was too overwhelming for the lesser vampires who died from just being exposed to his presence. This is Rimuru's avatar when he is releasing 1% of his powers. Rimuru entered the building and saw a step that led to the top of the building. He climbed the stairs and approached a huge fancy door. He opened the door and saw a sight that made his anger to reach a burning point. Rimuru saw a male vampire who was standing naked next to a table that looked like an office table. On the table was a girl that looks like she was 6 years old, naked and crying as the male vampire was king her and moaning to himself. The male vampire didn't notice that he was no longer alone in the room with the girl until he all of a sudden rose with great force and crashed into the hard concrete roof of the room with his body. Rimuru, who had his hand stretched out, was glaring at the male vampire. He brought down his hand and the male vampire fell to the ground with great force which cracked the ground. Rimuru raised his hand again and the male vampire rose again and crashed to the concrete roof, and he brought his hand down again with the male vampire crashing to the ground again. Rimuru repeated this until the male vampire's body was nothing more than mush meat. He stretched out his hand to the corpse of the vampire and a small ball of white fluff flew to his hand. The white ball of fluff began to squirm around, but Rimuru held him tight and glared at him. "Don't think that I'm so merciful enough to grant you an easy escape with death. You will suffer for this insolence for all eternity, you psychopathic freak," Rimuru said to the ball of fluff, which was the soul of the male vampire he killed. Rimuru opened a white portal in front of him and fire gushed out of it. Fire was filled in the other side of the portal. The soul of the vampire saw what was on the other side of the portal and became afraid. It turned to Rimuru and begged for mercy, but Rimuru ignored its pleas and threw him into the burning abyss where it will suffer an endless torment for all eternity. The soul fell into a pool of flames before heavy metal chains pierced his body and bound him inside the burning lava filled with other countless souls. Rimuru closed the portal and turned to the little girl on the table who was looking at him with a scared look. "It's okay, little one, I mean you no harm. I've come to rescue you from this place," Rimuru slowly told the little girl. The little girl calmed down a little after hearing Rimuru's voice. She tried to cover herself with her hand, but she screamed in pain when she tried to move. Rimuru saw her in pains and rushed to her side. "Let me help," he told her. He stretched out his hand to the little girl and she glowed a bright white color. The glow lasted for a few seconds before it died down. After it died down, all the pains the little girl felt before in her body was gone. The little girl looked at herself in astonishment. She looked back up to Rimuru and saw him smiling at her, which caused her to blush in embarrassment because she was still naked. Rimuru saw her blush, which increased his smile. "What's your name, little girl?" "Why, Yoshino, sir," the little girl, whose name is Yoshino, answered in shy manner. "Well, Yoshino, let's do something about your clothes," Rimuru told her with a smile. He clicked his fingers and clothes appeared and covered Yoshino's body. The clothes began to wear itself on Yoshino's body until she was fully dressed. "Do you like it?" Rimuru asked her. Yoshino looked at herself in excitement. "Yes. I love it so much. Thank you, mister. Please call me Rimuru," Rimuru told her with a smile. Yoshino nodded shyly. "Okay, Rimuru-san." Rimuru nodded at her. "Well, Yoshino, do you have any family in this village that you would like to say farewell to?" Yoshino's became sad and shook her head. "I don't have any. I don't know who my parents are and I don't have any friends." Rimuru looked at her in sadness. "How old are you, Yoshino?" Yoshino looked up at him. "I'm not sure, but the nice lady who gives me sweets says that I'm 6 years old. I see. Then come with me, Yoshino. I can't leave you alone with everyone in this town being dead. I will take care of you from now on, Rimuru told her. Yoshino looked at Rimuru with a hopeful look. Really, Rimuru-san? You would take care of me? Rimuru squatted down to her level. Of course I would. Come on, let's leave this place. He stood up and stretched out his hand for her to take. Yoshino smiled and quickly took his hand in hers, and both of them left the big burning mansion. Rimuru and Yoshino walked to the road that leads outside of the burning town. Rimuru looked up and saw Khloe and Canade waiting for him outside the burning town. Canade was still carrying the little girl she rescued on her back. Rimuru approached them. It looks like this two are the only survivors in the town, he said, referring to Yoshino and the little girl on Canade's back who was still sleeping. It appears so. What do we do now, Rimuru? Khloe asked him. We take this two with us on our journey. I'm sure the vampires will come for us after they hear what happened in this town, which I'm hoping for, Rimuru said to them. That's true. The vampires will want revenge against us for killing their own, Canade said. Exactly. So instead of waiting for them to come to us, let's go to the vampires' capital and free all the humans that are being held hostage there, Rimuru said to them. Khloe smiled. Not a bad plan. I'm in. Canade looked a little hesitant, but she remembered just who Rimuru and Khloe were, which helped to calm her down. Sure, why not? It's not like I can stop you two anyway, she said with a sigh. Then it's settled. Let's go to the vampires' main kingdom, Rimuru said with excitement. By the way, Rimuru, who is the little girl clinging to your hand? Khloe asked. Oh, her name is Yoshino, and let's just say that the circumstances of how I found her is a secret. She will be coming with us too, Rimuru told Khloe. Khloe nodded and turned to Yoshino, who was still clinging to Rimuru's hand. Nice to meet you, Yoshino. I'm Khloe Obel and we will be traveling together from now on. Yoshino nodded at her. It's nice to meet you too, Miss Khloe. Canade walked up to Yoshino. And I'm Canade. Glad to have you in the group. Likewise, Miss Canade. Yoshino answered. Okay then. If we are done with the introduction, let us depart, Rimuru said to them. And the five of them left the human town that was burnt to the ground by some vampires. Their destination was the great vampire kingdom of Lunora, which was the capital of all the vampires and also where the queen of vampires was said to reside in.